Okay, good morning. For those of you in the Western Hemisphere, my name is Josh Hurewitz. I'm going to be delivering the third part of the Mesila Sister to Sister seminar related to awareness, and I'd like to let you know that this seminar is a combination of seminars that we in Baltimore have given a number of times, and I'd like to just outline kind of where we're going and what we're doing. I'm going to share my screen, so you won't be seeing much of me, uh, but you will be able to ask some questions over the phone if you'd like. You could just unmute yourself by hitting *6 to unmute yourself for a question, and then remute yourself by I'm not sure what the number is, but make sure to mute your phone if you can. I'm gonna share my screen now, so you can see what the PowerPoint for the seminar is. Those of you who have a form that was sent to you earlier in the week or last week, you can look at that for reference if you don't see the PowerPoint on the screen now. So I'm going to quickly go over and share my screen with you. One moment. Okay, I hope those of you can see this. Just one moment, please. I just want to make sure I'm not in trouble. Just one moment. Hello. Okay, thanks. Okay, we're going to be starting now. Like I said, this is a combination of seminars that we in the past have done for Mesila in Baltimore, and we are now going to be broadcasting it for Sister to Sister in conjunction with Sister to Sister. Okay, just get this. Let me just describe what our plans are for the day, for this seminar. The goal is to become aware, not necessarily to lead with the specific tools required to manage a family budget, but just to gain a level of awareness. One of the things that we do in the Baltimore Mesila branch is we have a form that we fill out, which I'm going to go through in tremendous detail as we go through the seminar, and you will very quickly realize the challenge of just becoming aware as to what the budget situation you're living with is. It's a tool that we use, and many times families who come in wanting counseling just get the form, fill it out, and they quickly realize what their situation is, and they on their own can determine what they need to do to make changes to make sure they have a balanced budget. So it's an extremely important part. It's the first part. It's the part you must do before you start anything else. Become aware of exactly what your income and expenses are. And later on, we're going to speak a little bit later on how to manage a budget. We're going to look at what a budget is and all the details of a budget. One thing we do in counseling, and I can just mention that we've done many sessions of counseling, is we go through the form line by line to ensure its accuracy. Accuracy meaning it's about right. It doesn't have to be down to the penny, but it has to be about right, so that someone who's going through the form really has a pretty good sense of what their expenses and income are. Then we help you determine where you are right now relative to being financially balanced or not, and help you determine whether areas you think you need to change to become balanced, and are they related to either income or expenses or both. Just to give you a bit of background, Mesila in Baltimore has been in existence for 6 years. We have done seminars for various targeted groups, including the general population, young marrieds, women that are recently single. Some men fall into that category as well, soon to be college and high school students. We've really adapted this seminar or seminars like this to very specific groups. In our counseling experience, we've counseled between 200 and 300 units, which is either families or individuals. So when I speak about how things work and what we've done, it's based on a fair bit of experience. I can say that we have now in Baltimore a quarterly seminar where we have, the last one was a little bit lighter because it was during the summer, but we have in excess of 80 people coming to those seminars to learn about the kind of work that Mesila does and the ways Mesila can help them. Those of you who have a form in front of you, you can follow along. Those of you who do not have a form in front of you or looking online, you can probably see this. Those of you who are on the phone, going to have to get a copy of the form to really understand what we're speaking about and to get a better sense of how the historical budget form works. Now, again, this is an historical budget form. This does not have to be absolutely 100% to the penny, but it has to be generally a pretty good average over the year of what your monthly expense is. Let me give you an example of what I mean, an average monthly expense. Even though you have Pesach that occurs only once a year, the expense for Pesach really should be broken down into 12 and laid out over 12 months. Each month has 1/12 of Pesach in it. Excuse me. So it's very important that when we ask for what various amounts are for various things, you think about it not in the last month or the last 2 months or next month, but you think about it over the period of a year. There are opportunities you'll see later on in the form for things that happen periodically, like Yontif. But let's give an example of a car repair. A car repair happens in only, let's say, 1 or 2 months of a year if you're lucky, but you have to really expect to pay for that over the period of a year, meaning you spread it out. You want to allocate money to cover that expense. Excuse me, I'm dealing with a bit of a cold, so if I cough in the middle, you'll excuse me. The first part we want to look at is income and what your salary is. If you look at the form, generally there are sections of the form that are white and some that are yellow. The yellow sections are things that total. If you work on the form in Excel, which is a software program, and you put information in electronically, things will automatically total for you. If you're doing it manually, you'll have to do the addition yourself. And here are the categories of things you want to look at for income. So for example, at least in the United States, there is a monthly amount that you get paid. There are a whole series of deductions for various purposes. One is healthcare, if your company is paying part of your healthcare premium, retirement. If you take out money for taxes, which you should, federal and state and local taxes and other deductions for various reasons. Every paycheck is a little bit different, but we like to know the first yellow box, which is the net take-home pay. How much money do you actually have to spend from your salary? Below that, there are a whole series of other categories of income that some people get. Some people get gifts. Some people have investments where they generate cash income every month. Some people get alimony, child support. Some people get government support, and then there may be some other monthly income from a second job or something along those lines. Very important that we have a very good idea of what income is. This is one that, if you're going to be precise about anything, this is the one you want to be the most precise about. Have a really good starting point as to say, to be able to say, this is where I'm starting. This is how much money I actually have to spend on a monthly basis. I'm going to move down to the next section of our form. And this is actually, if you have a printed form, this is still on the first page. These are fixed expenses. These are expenses that you know what they are, and the amounts do not change. And there's some, but very little month-to-month variation. These expenses are typically relatively easy to get. You pretty much know what these are because they're the same every month. I just want to help you navigate this page a little bit. Again, these expenses are fixed, but one of the things we'd like to know, not so much for this page, but for other pages, is you see towards the right side, but a little bit towards the middle, we have something called source, which is not only what the amount is, which is on the extreme right, but how do you know that that's the amount? Is it a bill? Is it a check or a credit card, or are you just estimating? Extremely important to know that, what this expense actually is and how you know that's what the expense is. People tend to underestimate or overestimate a lot if they don't have real evidence. one of the things we do in our counseling is we ask people to provide evidence for various expenses that they have. And so if you have, again, in our counseling, it's very important for you yourself, you want to have a pretty good idea as to how confident you are in the numbers that you're using and putting into this form. So for example, we have mortgage, what your interest rate is on the mortgage, if you're paying a mortgage. Does it include real estate taxes? Does it not include insurance, or yes, include insurance? This is homeowners insurance. Or do you pay rent, or do you pay both? Do you have a second mortgage, which is a home equity? And what's the interest rate on that? The interest rates here are important because to understand whether this is a good mortgage or a good rental or a good home equity line, it's good to know what your rate is relative to what's available in the market now or in the future. So you know whether you should renegotiate or get a different mortgage or home equity line. So again, this is housing. People pretty much know what this is every month. They know what it was last month. They know what it is next month. Next is the section on utilities. These are semi-fixed. Typically, if you live in the Northeast where I live, gas and electric bills are higher in the winter and in the summer. With heat and air conditioning, they're much lower in the spring and in the fall. But the average monthly amount that you expect to pay. So for example, if your air conditioning bill is $400 in the summer and only $100 in the spring, you probably want to put a number in there like 200, because that'll average out for 12 months. Same thing with a home phone. If you have one, cell phones, those are pretty much standard unless you run over. And if you have teenagers, you almost always run over. If you have water or sewer bills, some people do and some people don't, whether you have internet or cable service, etc. So those, again, typically are fixed. They may vary a slight amount, but they don't vary a whole lot. Underneath that are fixed auto payments. This is payment for the purchase of a car, whether you lease it or finance a car. What are you paying every month? If you don't have, some people have cars that are totally paid for. They have no expenses in this area. Below that is insurance. Some people have homeowners insurance that's not included in their mortgage. Some pay it separately. People have life insurance, health insurance, disability insurance, auto insurance, and those things are all covered in that section. Those, you pretty much pay them either by month or you pay them a few times a year, and you just divide the total amount by year into 12, and you put that number in there. Again, this is an average monthly budget, so don't worry about each month by itself. Just worry about the average. Below that is education. Again, some schools require education to be paid all of it up front. Some require to pay it over 12 months. Some require to pay it over 10 months, etc. Again, the number we're looking for is the number on average over 12 months. So if you look at the school 1, school 2, school 3, number of children, and the amount you're paying every month, whether it's 10 months or 12 months, divide the total by 12. Below that is tutors and various lessons for children, daycare for children, and other school expenses. There may be other expenses related to education that you'd like to include here. You can put them into other related expenses, books and trips and various school supplies, etc. Again, what we're shooting for is, on the average, what you pay per month for children in school. Below that, we have other fixed expenses, subscriptions, shul memberships, and everything else. This page, if you fill it out electronically, at the very bottom yellow section, adds up all the other yellow boxes above it, and it tells you how much your fixed expenses are. This is what your base amount is, fixed almost every month. It's about this every month that you should expect to pay without any variation or without too much variation. This is the relatively easy part of the form to fill out. Most people have very little trouble figuring out the income and figuring out this section. The numbers are accessible. You pretty much know what they are. This is not the most challenging part of the form. I'm going to move down to the next section, which is actually the top of page 3 if you have a printed form. And that is variable expenses. These are expenses that in some months they might not be there, and the amounts can vary. They can swing quite a bit. But the goal here again, the monthly average, how much do you spend on average? So those of you who at least live in the States and have physician out-of-pocket expenses for doctor bills or copays, we have that amount. Now again, if you look at the past month or this month, it may not be a good indicator of what your actual expenses are, but it actually may be misleading. You want to look at over a long period of time how much you've been spending on physicians' expenses out of pocket. This is after insurance. Same thing for medications. Some medications are covered. Excuse me. Some are not. On average, how much have you been spending? If you don't know these numbers, you can typically go to your drugstore and say, can you give me a printout of all the bills I have paid in the past to give me a better idea? Some people tend to guess at this. It's a very hard number to know if you do pay it, but if you do pay it out of pocket, this is not something people typically keep track of, but it's actually worthwhile to know how much you're spending on this. In addition, in the United States, if you have relatively high medical expenses, they are tax deductible to an extent. So you probably want to know what they are and know if you have enough to make them deductible. Again, dental vision, dentist you don't go to every month and you don't buy a pair of glasses every month, but on average, what do you pay for the year divided by 12? How many pair of glasses do you have? How many people need glasses? How often do you replace them? You want to get a pretty good idea of what that is. Again, that's a variable expense. It's somewhat manageable, but if you need to go to the dentist or get glasses, most people don't have much of a choice. They just have to do it. Then we have another variable expense, which is auto and commuting expenses, which relates to gasoline, maintenance and repairs on a car. Again, this is a category where gasoline you pretty much have about the same every month. Maintenance and repairs usually have large repairs and small repairs. The large repairs don't happen every month. The small ones might happen once every 3 months. But again, we want an average for the year. In here, if you have a relatively new car with very few maintenance expenses, the number will be relatively small. If you have an old car, the maintenance expenses will likely be higher. So in understanding what your maintenance expenses are, you probably want to go back and look at your checks or look at your bills and see how you paid it. Commuting, parking, tolls, taxis, etc. Those are also expenses that vary depending on how much you do each of those things. If you go to the same workplace every day and you park and it costs you the same amount of money, or you take taxis every day, or you pay the same tolls every day, it's relatively simple. If this is only once in a while, you go every 2 weeks and you take a long trip and you pay tolls and etc., it's a little bit harder to get, but that's what the purpose of this line is. Housing, this is also a highly variable expense. In some months you have none, and some months you have a lot, and sometimes these expenses can also be quite steady. How often do you repair various things in your house? Again, over the period of a month. If you just move into a new or different living arrangement, you need to put up curtains, etc., but you don't have those expenses all at the beginning. You have them over time. Again, what we're trying to do in this section, all sections, is to get an average for the year divided by 12. What we're trying to do is getting a month-by-month, a monthly average annual budget. Just moving down through the category, gardening, if you have either someone who cuts your grass or someone who shovels your snow or anything having to do with outside maintenance of the house, that would go in gardening. If you have home cleaning help, it would go in the next line, home cleaning service. If you replace or buy new furniture for any reason, is another item, and then other variable. And there are many things that fall in the category, like I said, things like curtains, and you buy garbage cans, you buy various things that you need, not every month, but every once in a while, put them in on average, how much do you spend? One way to get at this is if you go to a store typically and buy these items in a store, you would like to know where about how much. You can look at the bills from those stores and look at the items you bought, look at the receipts, and figure out what you spent in the past. Food and clothing. This one is very highly variable. You have a lot of control over this. We're going to start with grocery, which is usually the biggest one in the category. Grocery store, food and other. Grocery stores, you may buy other non-food items there, like paper goods and various plasticware and et cetera, et cetera. How much you spend in a grocery store. There are other types of stores that sell. They're not your standard food store, but you go there as well. I put in the list here: Target and Walmart. Those are stores where people go and they buy either food or household items, and sometimes even clothes. They put in there. The category right underneath that is new clothing and shoes, etc. Those are things, again, you don't always buy them every month, but you may buy them a few times a year. Some people only buy clothes at Yontif time, but again, average that over the month and see where it fits. Dry cleaning, and then other food and clothing. Just to mention, this category, food and clothing, is one where if someone is trying to manage expenses, this is one of the areas that it's easiest to manage expenses. This is the one that you have the most control over. This is the one where you can actually reduce if you have to cut expenses. Just moving to the next section, again, on your sheet, this would be the middle of page 3. These are other variable expenses, and these are highly discretionary: restaurant and takeout food, other food, coffee and snacks, entertainment. You can read the list as well as I can. Again, these are highly discretionary expenses. Here, it's extremely important to understand what those numbers are and how you know what those numbers are. One of the challenges is when someone buys something with a debit card or a credit card and they simply swipe the card and charge it. They don't make a mental note of the fact that they bought a coffee Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and that coffee may be only a $2 coffee, but it's $6 for a week, and over a month it's $25. You may not register the $2 times 12, or I'm sorry, the $2 times 12 to get to $25. But how do you know what the number is, and how often do you go? And so that's why it may make sense to go back and look at receipts, etc., to get a better sense of what exactly the numbers are. Again, this charity and gifts given and pet expenses for those families who have pets, vacation expenses, again, over the period of a year. How much do you spend? On average, if you go on vacation once a year or twice a year, what's the average per month, et cetera, et cetera. We have other categories here, like other variable 1 and 2, which are things that certain families have and most families don't. Just put them in there so you get a complete picture and all the numbers tie. The last part on page 3 is credit cards. It's debt, whether it's credit card, which you have 6 slots for credit cards, and then other loans that are above it. Credit cards, it's extremely important that you get accurate numbers to start off here. Look at your last statement to see what the balance, what the amount owed is, and what your minimum monthly payment is. Both of those pieces of information are required, and then what is the current interest rate that you're paying on your credit card. The reason this is important, especially when you go through the counseling process, is a lot of times there are priorities in paying off various credit cards for various reasons. We've had credit card is usually the place where people, when they're not making their budget and they're accumulating debt, this is where the debt accumulates. And understanding how to get on top of this debt is extremely important, and we need to know really how much is owed, the monthly payment that they're requiring, and then what the interest rate is. And we'd obviously work on paying down debt where the interest rate is the highest. That's usually the case that we do, but it's good to know what these are. Many Mesila clients have done balance transfers. If you know what those are things where a certain amount on a credit card is transferred to another credit card for 0% interest for 6 months, which sounds like a good idea, and typically it is if you can pay it off in 6 months. But a lot of times those interest rates increase over time, so it's really hard to get on top of this unless you just pay it down or figure out a way to get rid of this debt some other way. Just one word of caution: those of you who do have credit card debt, there are many ways to manage credit card debt, which include talking to the credit card company and asking for some forbearance. It is not a debt that is like other debts. Mesila counselors can probably give you some ideas as to how you may want to approach this if you do owe a lot of money on credit cards. The second to last section, which is relates to loans, these can be family loans, student loans, any other kind of loan that you may have outstanding. Again, we need to know what the balance is, what the interest rate is, and what the monthly payment is on those loans. The second to last line, actually the third to last line on this piece of paper, is monthly payments to savings or investments. This is where if someone has income that exceeds their expenses, or they cut their expenses to make sure their income exceeds their expenses, and they want to save for a rainy day, they want to save for various simples, want to save just to have money in case something happens. This is where the money goes. You put it into a savings, you put it into your budget, and just to get a sense of how much money are you actually putting away and saving. And then we have totals. This is total of, so we had above total of fixed expenses. Now we have total of variable expenses. We're going to look at both those numbers, and they both tell us a different piece of the story. Later on, we'll go into that. The second to last page, page 4 of 5 on the form, is anything that you receive annually. Like I said before, there are some expenses that come in less than every month. Some income comes in less than every month, whether you average it into the page 2 or you put it here, like year-end bonus or tax refund or gifts. You can put it either place, but only put it in one. So you have a sense of this is money in my budget that I can count on coming. Some of this you can't count on. If you can't, it really shouldn't be here. But again, this is historical, so it's not that critical. But just understand that this is a number that is income that comes in, but not every month. And below that on the form, same thing here. These are expenses that occur, but not monthly. These you may have included previously, you may not have, only include them in one place. For example, moving through this, we have through the list. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but health insurance that's not subtracted from the paycheck, homeowners insurance that's not included in your mortgage, et cetera, various things, shaitel care, which does not happen every month. It might, but if it happens periodically, how many times a year does it happen? What's the total? Put it in here. Gifts, vacations. Again, we had a category in the past. You can put your vacation expenses either here or elsewhere. Home repairs, same sort of thing. At the bottom on this slide, we have Yom Tov expenses. What we're looking for here is Yom Tov expenses over and above the expenses you've already included previously on the form. So, for example, there is food in the budget every month. There is clothing in the budget for every month. This asks for let's say for Pesach, how much more do you spend on Pesach on food and clothing? So there's a base amount plus the difference here. If the only time you buy clothes is on Yom Tov, with Pesach, Rosh Hashanah through Sukkot and Shavuos, Hanukkah, and Purim, if the only time you buy clothing is for Yom Tov, then that's fine. Put the number here for clothing, and don't put any number. Put a 0 when it says clothing on the previous slide, or 2 slides ago. Okay, so we're trying to capture everything you might spend for Yom Tov over and above what you spend on a regular basis. It all boils down. If you have the form in front of you, and you do the form in Excel, this is what you get at the end. You get a sense of what your monthly cash flow is, how much you're bringing in. If you add your periodic expenses, what your annual number is and what your monthly number is. This will tell you on a monthly basis, on average, how are you doing. Now, again, if the numbers are accurate and precise, you will have a very good indication of where you are. If the numbers are just guesses, this number, the totals here will not be as accurate. The entire goal of this exercise is to get a very good handle on exactly where you are in terms of what your budget is right now. Without a good starting point, it's very hard to establish a good budget and figure out how you want to run your budget. I can tell you that in counseling sessions, it is not uncommon that we have to go over a 3-month period, go back to a family over 3 months and help them pull numbers together to get a budget. This form is not at all easy. Do not, if you think it's easy, you're not really looking carefully at the form. It's very hard to get these numbers if you don't have them readily available. If you have them readily available, it might be easier. But this is extremely hard form to fill out. But the work is worth it because it enables everyone, especially the counselors, to have a really good sense of what we're starting with, so we can move forward. I'm going to skip this slide for the sake of time and I'm going to skip the next slide for the sake of time. What I'd like to do is talk to you about the budgeting process. And this is really where the rubber meets the road in terms of Mesila and how Mesila helps families better understand their situation and help them manage their own situation. Again, Mesila as an organization does not tell families what to do or how to do it. We help families understand their options, give them tools, and enable them to get on top of their finances so they can actually balance their own budgets and no longer really need Mesila to help them do that. This is an educational process where the families do the work and Mesila helps guide. So let's just start with the budgeting process. What does this mean? What this means is we start with the awareness that you just gained by filling out that form, listing all your expenses and all your income. And you understand what your situation is. And then you start. And a good place to start, and the reason we start with filling out this historical budget form, is because this gives you a starting point. So we start with historical financials. We start with what was in the past. We think that's what will happen in the future. Again, this is what we're doing now before the first of a month. We're starting with what we think we spent last month, and let's start planning for what we are going to spend this following month. So we start with the form we just filled out, assuming you did it accurately and precisely enough to move forward. You start with that. Then we look at all the different expenses and say, okay, I understand what's fixed, what I really don't have a lot of opportunity to change. I mean, like the second in the middle of the top row here. Understand what's fixed, what are the fixed expenses that I can't really change, what are semi-variable, what are highly variable, and what are discretionary. Semi-variable are things like healthcare expenses. Variable are things like food. Discretionary are things like restaurants. Okay, so understand where money is going in those expenses. And then you establish a budget or a plan. This is your best guess. I'm on the rightmost top arrow. Establish your best guess budget amount for how much you think you want to spend this month. You look at the totals and see where you are. Are you in a deficit? Are you in a surplus? Then you adjust to balance the budget. We're going to go through this in detail. And then you track throughout the month, and then you evaluate next month. And so this process circles on itself. And basically, you keep on going back and say, what was my plan? How did I do? What should I do for next month? That's the process until you own the process and you have a really good idea of how your money is being managed. Let me give you an idea. This is not a real family, but it'll give you a sense of, this is a budget. So again, a budget is something that you plan for. This is not real. This is what someone looks at for January of a certain year. and this is what they expected. In this case, we had a husband, wife. We have gifts coming in from one of the sets of parents, and this is what a budget looks like. Similar to the form you filled out, there are salaries, there are gifts, and there are other things you expect for a specific month. There are a whole series of fixed expenses. There's rent, there's a phone expense, there's auto payments, and you see categorized by the F all the way on the left side. These are fixed costs that do not change on a monthly basis. This is what you pay every month, or you expect to pay every month. Then you have those that are combination fixed and variable. A cell phone, you have the bill every month, but you don't know what it's going to be exactly. You have parking and tolls. You don't know exactly what it's going to be, but you usually have it every month. You have cleaning expense in the house. Sometimes you have someone come once a week. Sometimes it's every other week. It happens, but you don't know exactly when or how much. And you put an amount in that you think will cover that expense for this coming month. Then you go to those that are much more variable. Gas and electric is variable. Doctor's bills, et cetera, food is variable. Restaurants are variable, et cetera. And you total it out, and then you say, okay, my income, the way I budgeted as I'm starting, is $4,900. My expenses are $5,186. I'm in a deficit in my plan of $286 a month. That's what the parentheses in red mean. So what I have to do now is go back and say, okay, this can't be my plan, because if this is my plan, I'm at a deficit. I have to adjust things to make sure that I can actually have a balanced budget. So what I'll do is I'll start to play with some of the categories, whichever ones you think you have some leeway in, and cut those categories to get either to cut your expenses or to try and increase income in order to balance this budget. So again, this is a budget. It happens before the month starts. It's a plan. It is not anything more than a plan of what you expect you will do. This next slide shows what you do when you balance your budget and then you track it over time. So again, the yellow, just like on the previous slide, the yellow is the budget. This is what my plan is. I plan, and you see that the budget, according to the plan, is we change expenses to get it down to plus 14. I'm expecting $14 extra this month. That was my plan. And then reality happens. And let's look at what happens in reality. I expected in one salary to make $2,800. I really made $10 more. So I have a $10 surplus there. Another salary, I was expecting $1,900. I only made $1,820. I have a deficit of $80 there. My gifts came in exactly as I expected. All my fixed expenses as I moved through came in as expected. My fixed and variable semi-fixed expenses came in about where they were. I saved a little bit on house cleaning expenses, and then I saved a fair bit of money on a whole series of other expenses, but I paid a little bit extra on a bunch of others. For example, I didn't expect to spend any money on entertainment, but I did, and it was $25 that I did not expect. I expected my food bill. My other food, which is Target and Walmart, to be $150. I only spent $120. I have a $30 surplus there. I allocated $50 for dental. I didn't have it, and so those $50 went towards excess. So my income of $70, my income, which was reduced by a total of $70 this month, really my expenses were reduced somewhat, and I actually ended up with a $40 surplus this month. Okay, so this is tracking the budget over time. I'm just looking at the time here. We have about 15 minutes. I want to just get through 2 more slides, and then I'll open up the floor for questions. In terms of tracking expenses, there are many ways of doing it. Tracking income is usually relatively simple. Tracking expenses is quite complicated. If you do it manually, or you can do it electronically. Um, One of the methods we recommend, and there are a few variations which I'll explain, are the old-fashioned method, which probably your parents or grandparents use, is the cash method, which is very simple. Is you take envelopes, you label each envelope by category of expense, you put cash in for that expense. When the cash in that envelope is gone, the amount of money you have to spend in that category is gone. That's a very quick feedback on how much money you have available to spend by category. Another way to do it is using receipts. Every time you buy something, you take a receipt, you put it in the envelope. Let's say your food bill is supposed to be, or your budget at $750. You go to the supermarket, you spend $67. You write on the envelope. Again, there's nothing in the envelope when you start. You write $750 as the budget for the month. You subtract 67 from 750, and then you know that total, or that sum, is the amount of money you have left to spend on food in that month. So that's another envelope method. Again, cash or receipts. There are many electronic methods. I'm not going to go into all the details on how to do that. Those of you who do any banking online have smartphones. You can use various programs that make it very simple for you to track what your budget is and how you're doing on your budget. There are programs like mint.com, but any bank or almost every bank every bank I know of has a budgeting function in it, where you can go online and see how well you're doing by category, and you know where you are in real time. It's very important to understand and to keep a record of where you are in real time, so that you don't forget you made an expense, or thought you spent money already, but you still have money to spend in the category. Both those mistakes are avoidable if you are able to track. In Baltimore, we encourage people to use the various electronic methods that are passive, meaning you don't do anything. As soon as something is charged on a credit or a debit card, it goes electronically to your phone, and it counts against the budget for that budget item, and everything happens automatically. Those of you who do not have phones, or don't know how to use it with a smartphone, or don't use anything online, a little bit more challenging. You have to use a different kind of tool, but the tools are available. Mesila has tools to help you track spending over a period of a month if you have a budget set. The preference here is for the trade-off between how tedious it is and how timely it is and how accurate it is. Different families or different individuals have different ways of doing it. Mesila does not dictate anything, especially this. Whatever is more comfortable for the individual doing it, that's the way we like them to do it. We typically counsel to do a whole variety of ways and let people choose. Some people stick with the method, some people change. That's okay. Now, this is tracking for the middle of the month. At the end of the month, there should be some reconciliation where you actually know how much you spent and how much money came in. You should know that. That's at a minimum. It's much more actionable if you know in the middle of the month where you stand. If you don't know in the middle of the month, you're kind of just hoping that the end of the month is not a surprise for you. But really, you want to know in the middle of the month, so you can, especially for variable expenses, you can know, do you have money to spend on this or do you not? Or should you save the money you have in the budget for this category or not? It's okay to know at the end of the month, and that's not bad, but it's much better to know in the middle of the month exactly how you're doing. Before I open for questions, I'm going to just have one more slide. This is a process. Learning how to do this is a process. Those of you who have never done any budgeting or never managed money at all, do not expect to do this right the first time. It's very hard to do. Many people fail at it. At Mesila, we encourage them to fail and get up again and keep trying, because once you have it, this is a very liberating thing, to actually not worry about money and know exactly where you stand. It's a very liberating experience. Not that the budget is always pretty, but at least you know what the budget is. It's very important that the budget be realistic. Many people look at their historical financial worksheet, the one we went through in detail, and they say, I'm cutting out these expenses. It has to be realistic. You can't just cut your expenses. For example, people cut their food expense in half and they eat through what's in their closet and their freezer, and the next month they just can't sustain that. That just doesn't work. It must be sustainable. Anything drastic will be hard to sustain over time. It has to be reasonable. When a budget is not followed, or a budget is blown, or you way exceed a budget, or budget is not met, exceed or fall short of your budget, there are a number of reasons. The budget was not good. Remember, a budget is just a plan. The plan may have been unrealistic. Unexpected things happen. Things you did not expect to happen happened. I can tell you that in almost every case, every person, every family unit, every month, there is always something that is unexpected that happens. It always happens. So you may not know what it is that might happen, but it will happen. Something that you didn't expect or budget for will happen. Another reason that budgets are not kept to and they fail is that temptation overrides a budget. People tend to step outside the budget and they say, well, I have some excuse as to why I'm not going to stay within the budget, and they give in to temptation and they blow the budget. That's sort of another reason. But again, this is a process. This is not something that you will get off the seminar and immediately be able to do all by yourself, and do it right without mistakes, and do it from now forevermore into the future. It's too hard to do that. This is something that you have to learn how to do. It's a process. You will learn about things that you may not have ever experienced. You will understand from the basics that we just went through over the past almost hour, how to think about numbers, how to think about a budget, things that are income, things that are fixed. It's extremely important that in the process of trying to balance a budget, it is not only cutting expenses. That's where most people focus initially. It's not a bad place to focus, but increasing income is really the first place everyone should be looking, because increasing income typically, and again, this is experience. I've counseled more than 100 families. Our branch in Baltimore has counseled between 200 and 300 families. Increasing income is the easiest way to balance a budget, if it's possible. That's the first place you look, not the last place. Most people think it's daunting to do that, but it really makes things a lot easier if you can find ways to increase income. People tend to ignore that opportunity, and it really makes balancing a budget much harder than it really has to be. So look at increasing income, look at modifying some variable and discretionary expenses, and then see if you can balance the budget doing those things. Again, a budget is a plan. A plan you have to try and follow it in real time if you can. I am going to put myself back on. I'm available to listen to any questions that anyone may have. Are there any questions? Any questions? Anyone? Okay, thank you for your attention, and I'm going to wrap it up. Those of you who have Mesila, I'm sorry, yes? Yes. Okay. Did you pay with a charge card, or you paid with cash, or how did you pay for it? Okay. Right. So I mean, going back historically is very hard. What you may want to do is start from a point, let's say now, and just start tracking expenses now for a typical month. Many families have a lot of challenges going back historically. It's just very hard to do. It's good if you can, but if you can't, you can't. Now, I would say that your fixed expenses you should probably be able to put in immediately. Your variable expenses, yeah, the variable expenses, if you use a debit card, you should be able to get a bulk of them. I don't know how much you use a debit card versus cash, but you should be able to get a bulk of them. It may not be perfectly precise, but you'll get close. And that's a starting point. And then you say, okay, right. Yep. Yep. Right. Now, again, you're touching on an issue that's a little bit of a challenge, and that is over the period of a year, you spend $120. Let's say that's all you spend. So that is calculated to be $10 a month. When we look on an annual basis, your annual budget will be $10 a month. Now, for that expense. Now, in terms of um, cash, that expense happens in August. It doesn't happen over 12 months. So from a cash perspective, um, you need the $120 in August. But from a budget perspective, you budget $10 a month. For example, let me give you an example of how to think about it. You would put on the form you would put 10. That's your question. Let me tell you how to think about this. If you know that you're going to spend $120 on school supplies every year, what you'll do is every month you will put $10 aside every month for school, and by the time you have to spend money for school next year, you'll have the $120 in your account. That's the thinking. Okay. Yep. That's what some people do. Other people, if you like to use a debit card, use a debit card. You want to use a combination. You can have an envelope and say, okay, my plan. I'm just making up a number, but my plan for food is $1,000 a month. Okay, and I'm putting $500 into that envelope, and uh, and I write down. So every time I buy food, if I buy food with cash, so I see how much cash is left. If I buy food with a debit card, I take my total number and I put the receipt for the food in the envelope, and I subtract out how much I have. So I have $1,000, 500 debit card, 500 cash, and I keep on subtracting out. So even within a category, you can actually use a combination of those two methods. Okay. 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 So let me tell you the simple way of doing it. The simple way of doing it is um, a simpler way of doing it. If you have, do you use any online banking? Okay, that actually, whether you use an online bank or Mint will actually help a lot. Um, the only challenge with Mint is every time you spend cash, you have to tell me which category it went into. Tell Mint which category it went into. That's the only challenge with Mint. Right. Everything else, if you go to a food store, Mint usually knows it's a food store, and if they miscategorize it, when you look at it, you'll say, "Oh no, that's not a miscellaneous. That's a food store." They may not be able to tell easily, but every time you take cash out, that's the one that makes it complicated because you don't know where the cash is going. So what you do is you say, "I took out $200 of cash," and then as you spend the cash, you say, "Okay, I'm putting this cash of the $200 I took out. 100 went towards this, 50 went towards that, 25 this, and 25 that in Mint." So that makes it a lot easier. You don't have to have all these envelopes. You just need keep it in your wallet. Take a receipt when you go into Mint and you say $200 came out of my bank account and it's just taken out as cash. What do I spend it on? I pay a babysitter. I pay this one. I pay that one. I'm sorry. hmm hmm Well, I mean, look. I mean, the issue is school supplies is one thing, but if we have a category of um, let me just see, what do we call it again? We, hold on a second. We call it. Um, hang on a second. Okay. Yeah, we call it food and clothing. Food and clothing. You can have variable. The whole reason for let me just take a step back. The whole reason for categorizing things is so you can manage it. Okay. So if I said you have $2,000 of variable expenses to spend, $2,000 for the month. Let's say that's a number, okay? And you don't necessarily care what you spend it on. You don't need to track each one. You can say that's my target. That's all I have. So if you want to track it as one big category, that's fine. But if you want to track it as uh, I really need to manage my clothes budget separate from my food budget, then you track it separately. But if you don't need to do that, you can track them all separately. You can track them all in one category. So the whole purpose of the categories is only to help you, not to make your life miserable. It's to help you. If you think that, listen, this is my budget for the month. I know I have to spend this on my rent and this on my car and this on my. I know I have to spend that. Okay, so I have this much to spend that's variable. Okay, and I don't care if I spend it on food or clothing. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. So don't track it. But you want to know what the total is going to be on variable expenses. Does that make sense? So in Mint, what you could do is just say, that's fine. Uh, I know that anything I do on my debit card, it categorizes. Everything else that comes out as cash, everything that comes out as cash is going into variable expenses. And I'm done. Then you're done. hmm We don't know that. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, you don't know the number yet. You don't know the number yet. Okay, so you can't really go forward. Where are you in the process? Mhm. Okay, okay, right. So I mean, I don't have an answer for you, but what I can tell you is do a budget form without tuition in it, and then solve for tuition. So assume your budget is balanced, and say this is how much money I have for tuition. This is how much money I have. Okay, that's where you start. And if your income goes up, the amount you have for tuition is greater. Where are you located? Out of town. Not in metropolitan New York area, you're saying. Yeah. Um, uh, you know, I don't know what arrangements will, Mesila International can make, but maybe they can arrange to have something done over the phone with you. But just contact the Mesila office or sister, and they will figure out how to get it done. I don't have an answer to that question. I don't have an answer to that question yet. That's something that Mesila is going to have to work on. I don't have an answer yet. Okay.
It's fine.
Okay. Any other questions? I hope that was helpful to more than just the person who asked it. All right, I'm going to sign off. We're a little bit over the time. Are there any other questions? Anyone? Um, Many people have that same comment, and in order to really understand and have a really thoughtful plan to move forward, filling out this form is hard. As I mentioned, it is hard, but it is a very important first step to get going. And I, like I said, from my experience dealing with all different situations, having this form filled out first is a good baseline to start the process. Without this form or something like it, even if it's not perfectly accurate, it's a good start. Now you could go straight to forming a budget, but what are you going to base the budget on? That's why you fill out this form, is to start establishing a budget. You can go straight and figure out what your budget is going to be every month and put it electronically online, and you're good to go. But this is okay. Okay, and okay, and I'm not sure. So you know what the number is now. You know what your budget is now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Okay. So the process is going to be. We as Mesila, we can't manufacture. We can't manufacture something to fill the gap in your budget. We can help you look at opportunities, but we can't manufacture. Our organization does not give out any money or anything. What we do is we help you better understand it. Now, there may be opportunities in your budget for you to close that gap somewhat. I don't know. I don't know your situation, but you're not alone in this. You're not alone, even close. But in order to improve the situation, you have to at least start with something. Now, if you think you can just go straight to a budget and say, "This is my plan," and I'm operating a deficit of X dollars, and I need to make up this much, and I'm going to do it by a combination of income and reduce expenses. Well, that's great. The purpose of this form that we went through is mainly to give people awareness. Now, if you filled out forms similar to this, even if it's in less detail, you filled out those kinds of forms, and you know what your numbers are by category, or even if not by category, generally, that could be enough. You don't need to do this. But the next question is, okay, so what are you going to do about it? That's the hard question, not filling out the form. Hard question is, how big is the deficit, and what are you going to do about it, and how are you going to approach it? So our counseling actually tries to help people come up with ideas, and again, not our ideas, help people come up with ideas, their ideas, for making this work. I guess you can write. I don't know what the email is. I think it's. I don't know. Just go online. I don't have the email address for international, but I just have the local one. But I think it's MesilaInternational.org is the website, and they have a contact me or something link, and you just go right into that. You did. Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I just work in Baltimore, so I don't know about the international. I can't. I think that's the main way, or you can try and call them. You can try and call them. Look online and get a phone number for the international number. I just don't know. There is someone in Brooklyn that I think you could probably get in touch with. But again, that's not my area. I would say, yeah. Okay. And any other questions? I'm not in a rush. I'll stay until we're ready. Until we're finished. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Okay, I'm going to sign off, and thank you for attending. And I hopefully all these questions were useful, and I think it'd be useful, folks at Mesila International, to send out to the list a contact and next steps process for the folks who listened in and would like some help with forms and the budgeting process, etc., that do not have branches where they are locally, or even if they do, how to contact those folks. Thank you.